Hello, family. Welcome to JFK Today, where I bring the ahas and the ha-has to every major political and pop culture moment you need to know when you need to know it. 4 times a week, 30 minutes a day. Don't be alone and don't be boring. So let's get dialed in. You did hear that new opening. I'm trying it out. It's the write-up for the show. A friend suggested I gave it a go. I'll get your opinions on it later. So we're hitting the DNC. Why is everybody so mad at Blake Lively? And a little-known vote in Georgia that, well, let's just say people are working diligently to ensure on Trump's side that they can upset the election if they need to. So I'll be keeping an eye on that. But before we get into the goods, I do want to note that, as some of you know, family tragedy happened last week. So I've been binge watching a lot of television, okay? I love TV. I'm a partial insomniac. So I caught up on House of the Dragon. And if you know anything about House of the Dragon, it's okay if you don't. It's basically a prequel to Game of Thrones. And I watched all 8 seasons of that. And let me just say this. So House of the Dragon is supposed to happen like several hundred years earlier. So I watched it, and it's in Westeros, right? They're both set in Westeros. And in House of the Dragon, there's black people. But then hundreds of years later in Game of Thrones, there's no black people. So where did the black people in Westeros go? What happened to them? What nefarious activities took place? Okay, that's it. Anyway, I was like, I mean, we all know in reality it's a diversity thing, which I actually do appreciate. But one can't help but ask the question because I'm buying into the fiction. Speaking of fiction, the DNC, where technically a bunch of possible candidates are getting together so we can have the big hullabaloo and they can try to get all the votes and try to get all the support. But Kamala Harris actually already secured that. So this is kind of like a song and dance show. These are some of the top lines you can expect. We're going to have a Joe Biden, right? He's going to make his last main showing at the DNC. You've heard me mention this, but I got to say, imagine being the headliner to going to the opening act. That's what happened to Joe Biden. That's a tough run. He has an opportunity to do the most gangster shit. I would have some legal experts surrounded. I'd be surrounded by them, and I'd be like, what can I do? Tell me everything I can do, every executive order that I can make to be the most awesome guy, to be the guy. Because, well, I just got to say, he failed on some really key issues. And let's just be clear, he's got to do something. Because right now, he's like the basement in a house for sale, right? It's there. He's there, but he's not the selling feature. So we'll see Biden's last hurrah, right? That toothy bitch, right? We got Hillary Clinton, who will actually be speaking tonight. It's Monday. And I got to tell you, it's a good opportunity for us to remember what she actually sounds like. Tuesday, Obama will be delivering a bold vision for America's future. That's the name of his speech. I'm like, could you have done that when you were president? Anyway, Wednesday, Waltz will be taking over along with Bill Clinton, because we know, just got to love the Clintons, Nancy Pelosi and Pete Buttigieg, that sassy, sassy man. And on Thursday, Harris will accept the nomination. I, just like all of you, have been really watching Kamala Harris and thinking, what's going on? What's the foreign policy stance? What's the economic policy stance? What's going on? Because she hasn't actually given us anything. Kamala Harris is running on the vibes Joe Biden lost, right? And that means something, because vibes are going to run out. Vibes are going to run out. I've seen on several different platforms, whether it was the Washington Post or the New York Times or, things of that nature, maybe The Guardian, where Kamala Harris has been called the joyful candidate, right? She's running on a campaign on joy. I'm just like, all right. First of all, let me just point out that in Chicago right now, thousands of people are rolling up on that city to protest the DNC, to protest the mass murder of Palestinians. We've not seen any major shifts happen. Yesterday's episode, we talked about Leahy coming out, the Leahy law that could allow Kamala Harris to end funding support to Israel's one-sided war. So there is a legal precedent that she can enforce, but she's not. Here's what I want to say, right? Because I want us to keep protesting. We have to keep protesting. We have to keep going. Of late, I have seen more and more people, though, online condemning anyone who has felt some kind of joy or relief in Kamala Harris taking over for Joe Biden. I've seen attempts by bots and malcontents to kind of sow discord between black organizers, for example, and any, Palestinian or pro-Palestinian folks. And I'm seeing a lot of disdain, a lot of language. This is not like some anecdotal thing like I've seen all through TikTok, on certain platforms, on X, Twitter. There's this belief, oh, well, you weren't real, you didn't care, you only care about yourselves. And I've also seen, so that's on the other side. And on this side, I've seen stupid shit like, we got to put our mask on the plane before we can put the mask on. Both of us, I should say, all of us sound like dummies. Sound like fucking dummies. Let me just break some things down, because we don't sound like dummies because we're dummies. We sound like dummies because we're trying to grapple with the fact that we feel fucking powerless in this moment. That's actually what's happening. And I don't know what to do with this feeling of powerlessness and disgust I feel at having seen what I've seen. I've seen horrific things, right? We've all seen horrific things. And in a perfect world, in the right kind of world, in a world with some kind of justice, we'd go out on the streets and we'd march and we'd raise our fists up and we'd cry and we'd rage. And that would be enough. We'd see the footage happening all the way over in Palestine, happening across the Middle East, and we'd say, okay, enough is enough. The right thing needs to happen. We need to do the right thing. But that's not what's happening either. And so we're left with this conundrum in a imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist, Christian heteropatriarchy. And our best move, it feels like, is to point the finger at the other person and say, well, you should have known better. You could have done better. You clearly don't care. If you feel a moment of relief, with Kamala Harris, you're a sellout, you're a neoliberal, you're a shill. And if you're somebody who criticizes that, well, you don't care about anything. You don't care if change happens. You want a dictator to take control. And again, I just want to give a moment to say, I don't, while annoying, which we've always been, across the many sides of the left, what we're actually working through is, again, that feeling of powerlessness and looking for something to latch onto because everything else feels abstract. This is a moment that we have to be very careful. I'm suggesting we take the route of compassion and curiosity, because the route that we're headed on is one of contempt. What do I mean when I say that? It's this, right? I too am annoyed at this, we're running on a joy campaign. I'm like, bitch, shut up. What's your policy? What are you gonna do about Israel? That's what I wanna know. But what I'm not gonna do is get online and start telling a bunch of people that they don't care, that they're shitty, that they are sellouts, that they may have marched or they may have done this and that, but they don't. What is the point of that? Listen, people yearn for relief. They yearn for a sense of control. And when I see folks doing that right now, I don't condemn it. Our job as people who care, as people who are organizers, and this is across the board, as people who are activists, advocates, whatever, a caring person, a thinking person, is to think about how do we take the attention for where it is and drive it to where it needs to be. But there's a running theme I'm seeing across lefty communities where we are learning to feel contempt for the very populace of people we claim to speak for and represent. That's a problem, all right? I've talked about how annoying we are, but I think I have an anecdotal theory for how we got here, because I think academics and academia fucking killed our movements. I went on a rant with this to my friend KR, who's literally sitting across from me right now. And I was just like, when did we stop being cool? And for the record, I am very much pro-expertise and pro-intellectualism. But I think academia took our fucking coolness out of queer and radical movements. Just hear me out for a second, right? We were out on the streets and we were in our communities and we were doing this, we were in that, we were awesome. And then we sort of mass mobilized this queer, trans, activisty, radical movement, the punks, and queer is really more a state of mind than it is sexuality. So you had all these folks who had mobilized, and now where are they supposed to go? Like, we were all like, wear the clothes you want, look the way you want, like, have tits and a beard, like, live your life. We've always been here, let's live our lives. But like, we weren't getting jobs. So we had to go somewhere. We went into academia. We actually like organized, and if you go to Toronto, every other queer has a master's in environmental studies. Nobody knows what the fuck environmental studies is, but because one went there, we all went there, and now and now queer runs the program. You know, that's just how it goes. And it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing to be an academic, to learn, to develop, to create language. But what it does on the practical level is teach you to deconstruct. And we have become, and we went from builders, right, pretty exceptional builders, right, dealing with every kind. I'm talking about black people, brown people, as we line up with like queer and trans and non-binary and punk identities, et cetera, and anarchist identities. Like, I need you to hear when I'm talking queerness at this, like, we're not really talking about sexuality. It's so much deeper than that, right? It's literally a way of looking at the world, one that it doesn't just tacitly and explicitly accept the status quo. So here we are, we traipse off and we run into academia, and we forgot how to build. And we forgot some key lessons on the use of language. Like, it just became deconstruction, deconstruction, deconstruction. And that is my theory for a part of how we got so fucking annoying. We're exceptional at deconstructing. Building stuff, not so much. We can point out the hole or the flaw in anything, and you might start realizing that you've been doing that in some of your relationships, or you've been doing it with that essay that you've been putting off writing, or that painting, or that poem. How you love is how you organize, right? I've been thinking about this a lot, because what I'm seeing is this need, this urgency to get online and say, and judge other people. I'm not interested in that. Go ahead. Power, go ahead. Elitism, I'm all for it. But our actual communities, this is the difference, I think, between values and convictions. And when you have values, they've never been vetted, they've never been tested, you've never been challenged on them. They're just things that you believe because you believe them. But convictions happen when you are tested, right? Are you fighting for a world where even the people that you can't stand have access to the same things? Or are you fighting for the end of a world? Are you fighting for the beginning of something or the end of something? Those questions matter, because I think we're at a point right now across the left where it's like, what do you want to do with what you know? We know a lot. We know a lot. What do you want to do with what you know? Here's a story before we move on to the next thing. But I've been seeing this like really gross culture online, and it's not going away, and it will get worse, and it's okay. Like, we're going to be just fine. But let me tell you this, friends stop inviting me to things after a while, because I just mess things up by accident. I don't mean to. It's my personality. Like, I'm not the easiest person to invite to a dinner party, even though I think I'm a joy, right? If somebody says something that I find curious, I will ask about it. And it turns out it's the same thing with any kind of event. So my friend puts on this event. She's brilliant, scholar, black philosopher, whatever. It's at USC. It's an academics thing. And there's a trans person on the panel, brilliant, trans woman, white, well-known, whatever. And she basically, when the question was asked, what do you see trans people, or anyone really, but trans people, getting any real success? Do you see things ever really changing for trans people in any meaningful way? And she said no. This is where we live, this is what it is, and it's shit, and it's gonna eat itself, and the best thing that can happen is the breakdown of society. And I felt that way before. But like, I need my asthma meds, you guys. Like, I just found out what CMOS is, okay? I don't wanna run anymore, and I'm not ready to die yet. So that's not a good enough answer, but more than that, it showed me in that moment the difference between somebody who only has to talk to academics in an ivory tower, and the difference between that and me, where I have to go out and actually talk to people and be in community and give people some sense of possibility, that I have to train myself into believing and continuing to believe. Here's the story that wipes the floor clean with that particular statement. Some of you might know I'm a boxer. I be boxing. I be throwing the punches. And I'm competitive, all this stuff, whatever. So I'm here in LA, you know, had a few fights, this, that, and the other. It's a very, very, very gender-reinforced sport. I mean, look at what happened with Imran Khalif, right? Like, it's a very... Anyway, there is a professional boxer who is a trans man. His name's Pat Manuel. And I went to his first ever pro fight against a man, like a cis man, in Indio, California. And man, it was rough. Like, my boxing club was aware that this guy was trans, and I had gotten into several debates. You know, and for the record, it was very effective. Like, when the debates were happening for the like between Clinton and Trump, they were playing it in the boxing club because of me. Like I was like, this is the fight of our lifetime, you guys. It's like Canelo stepping into the ring. It was very funny. But anyway, here I am in Indio, California, and everybody in my boxing club was curious. They weren't for it, they weren't against it by this point, but they were definitely curious and very judgy. And word had gotten out that Pat was born a woman. So when he walked out into the fight, during his walkout, they booed. The whole crowd booed in Indio, California, right? They booed. Pat, I'm standing in the ring, the energy is charged. I'm sorry, I'm standing by the ring, the energy is charged. And it's very clear, like, Pat seems, right? Maybe it's outsized in my mind because that aura and the atmosphere was so heavy. But it seemed to me that Pat was so much smaller than his opponent, right? Like, he was slimmer in the shoulders, right? It seemed like the guy was so much wider. Like, he came straight from Mexico. He didn't speak English, but he had learned that Pat was trans and might not have made the connections, but he was like, I don't care. He actually, like, this is not me yakking. Like, this is something he said. He's like, I don't care. You know, I'm here for the paycheck. Let's go. I'm gonna make this a short fight. Something like that, right? Gets in the ring, and he comes wailing. And for a second, Pat's in trouble. And everybody in that audience was like, yeah, that's why you don't be whatever that is, and you don't get in the ring. And then Pat fought back, and he kept punching. And he fights in a style that is Mexican. In boxing, there's different styles, right? There's Cuban styles, there's Mexican styles, there's English styles. He's fighting in a way that they fully recognize and back. He is fighting, it's like a phone booth, right? Him and this guy throwing blow for blow. Nobody's backing down, right? By nearing the end of that fight, Pat fought so well. He pushed so hard that crowd started cheering for him. They cheered. They weren't, it's not about whether somebody is trans, pro-trans or not, whether somebody is judgy or not. It's whether or not we can set up enough instances where that winning is possible, even when they lack the imagination to do it. I watched people's minds and hearts change in that moment. That's why you have to get out of the ivory tower or get off your keyboard and actually get into the world and organize. I'm not interested in your values. I'm interested in your convictions. I'm interested in our work. And I think we'd be taking a lot less liberties with how we treat each other and what's actually going on, right? Whether that's, you know, Trump and this foreign policy stuff, Kamala Harris, if we were doing more service-based work. Anyway, that's my weird anecdotal rant, but honestly, it was one of the most impactful moments of my adult life when it came to seeing what was possible when we actually just did the thing instead of debate the thing, instead of deconstruct the thing. So, there are some thoughts I have on that just for you. On to the next. I got to answer this question because it's been around. Why is everybody so mad at Blake Lively? If you're like me, I forgot that she existed. This is the person from Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. This may or may not matter to you, but you know I have a duty and an obligation to talk about the pop cultural things. So why is everybody so pissed off with her? All right, look. It's surrounding her film during her press tour, It Ends With Us. This is a film about a woman who gets into a relationship with an abusive man. It's very charged, and it's meaningful, or it's supposed to be, and it matters, particularly in this context, in this post-Me Too era, and when the right is clearly trying to incite some kind of bogus, shitty gender war. Well, get this. every time she's been asked about the question, you know, how do you feel about making a film like this? She's being weird and giggly and talking about hair products and being sweet. While Jason Baldoni, who was the co-star of that film, has talked about how serious it is or whatever. Then we start hearing gossip and they're talking about each other. So if you're like me and you're like, why do I know this girl's name again? What happened? What's going on? Basically, everybody is mad at Blake Lively because she's being really weird and has set out some sort of campaign against Jason Baldoni because he said, I didn't like working with her, it wasn't fun. Then she tried to spread a rumor that, and this is weirdly verified information, she tried to spread a rumor that he was fatphobic, but actually the interaction became public and he said, I have back issues. Can you let me know her weight? He said it to his personal trainer so that I can protect myself when I lift her up. There's a lift in the film. But I realize if I'm just gonna like make this very fast and draw the conclusion for us so that we don't have to sit through this and figure out why we have to care about this, celebrities are selling too much shit. That's really what it is. Like Blake Lively, you made this film, it was supposed to be meaningful, but you're busy trying to sell hair products, and that's what you're using this press tour for. When I talk about the rich, I'm not talking about actors, you guys. I think but I am talking about Ryan Reynolds, her husband. Like, he did very well. He is always selling something, but at least it's buried in something that seems cool, like Wrexham, for example. That was pretty awesome to witness. Blake just doesn't have the sauce, but you'll notice now because we live in late stage capitalism and it's about extracting as much as you can as quickly as you can, even Sexy Red is coming out with lip gloss. I'm like, bitch, what? You just got here. They went from, there was a point in time where only the likes of Jennifer Aniston was going to sell you something. And we got Conor McGregor selling you liquor. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has a tequila brand. They are optimizing and selling things, and that's it. And we're feeling weird about it because this was so on the nose and so clear, but this is what late stage capitalism is. It's going to be even our favorite celebrities selling us nonsense to extract as much as they possibly can, in part because they're getting less from the industries that extract from them, but honestly extract way more from us, including our personal data, which we should care about. If you don't know, please see that weird Disney thing that I learned where it's like terms of use, but it's really terms of abuse. And think of that in a very like Simpsons Halloween episode voice. Look, if that was a weird way to start this episode, stick with me, right? Because I don't know if I fully believe that academia ruined our movements. But what it's not doing is helping us build. And I think, just to reiterate, I really want us to move away from contempt. Like there are people that we don't have to pull our punches back from. But it's not each other, you guys. It's literally the bigots that are making our lives terrible. Please remember that from here on in. And yes, that trans scholar does hate me now. Yes, I did say that story. I am probably blocked on social media, but that's okay because we've all blocked each other at this point because that's what happens when you don't have to worry about actually being in community with people because we can be right on our own. Anyway, we got our last bit of the day. That is a weird thing that is happening in Georgia. I'm going to figure out what the actual results are because I'm recording this the night of the election for this particular thing. So what am I talking about? All right. So this is recorded on Monday. You'll be hearing this tomorrow morning. But the GOP-controlled state election board in Georgia is poised to adopt this rule. Poised. Ugh. What a terrible word. Anyway, to adopt this rule. And it would allow county officials, right? And by the way, these county officials secretly back the rule, at least one of them, to throw the election results of the swing state into chaos this fall. What they are trying to do is make a rule without any deadline on charging or suggesting that there's some kind of election fraud and then just running the clock out as long as they could. They learned when Trump made that phone call and said, hey, can you find me 11,000 votes? Remember that whole election fraud thing? Well, yeah, they refined their practice. And this is what it looks like. And they own that particular election board in that state. So here's how it goes, right? And this is from ProPublica, because you know I love me some ProPublica, but they were the ones who broke the story because they're gangsters, right? But what they want to do, this whole thing, right? A former Fulton County election official who submitted the initial draft told ProPublica herself that she had done so at the behest of a regional leader of a far right-wing organization involved in challenging the legitimacy of American election systems. That literally was the point of this. That's the entire point of this. And it is following that call from 2020 where Trump was like, find me those 11,000 votes. So now they call themselves the Election Integrity Network, and they want to bring this rule forward. And ProPublica has broken the story. We're watching it. We don't know the results yet, but it allows them to conduct a, quote, reasonable inquiry. But what's being challenged is what actually is a reasonable inquiry, that it cannot exist without a set deadline. And they would run this thing, their hope is to run this thing past even to December 11th, because then they would miss that deadline, sending its certified presidential election results to the federal government. That's actually what they want to do. They want to delay as much as they can, because they're hoes and they're losing and they know it. They know that things, like their back is against the wall, but rats in a corner, that's when they bite the most. So I'm going to pay attention to it so that you don't have to. I'm going to be clear with you. If Kamala does what she's actually supposed to do, which is shut down this shit with Israel and its endless one-sided war, or at the very least evoke the Leahy Law, give us an actual economic platform that is something people can back, honestly, blow some wind into the damn air of our labor movements. Be cool. Do cool shit. Come through. Be a progressive. But instead, she's currently running on this kind of patriot progressivism, which is not going to go far. I really don't need girl Obama. I just don't. I know it's okay, you guys. I'm allowed to say that one. I don't know if you are. It depends on the day and who's listening. But I don't want girl Obama. I don't. We don't need it. This is an opportunity for her to really actually reset some of the bullshit that we've experienced in this hard center-right turn. So anyway, that's it for today's episode. I want to be really clear about something right before we hit up the voice notes, that I am a big believer in curiosity. And contempt is the thing that erodes movements. Contempt is the thing that fuels the right. Right now, Biden ran on fear. Kamala's running on pseudo-joy. It's not real joy, but it's pseudo-joy. What are we running on? Because hatred alone for the government that exists and the people we believe support it is simply not enough for any kind of movement. We actually have to have an answer to the questions that we posit, or some kind of answer. And we do. We have so many. And being part of actual community, and not just, I want to say this is like, what good is all the language that we generated if we don't got nobody to talk to? That's really the question I have. Like, what good is it? Anyway, with that thought, why don't we hit up the voice notes and get that question of the day?
Hey, Future. This is Forrest. How you doing? I admire your fashion, and I would love to know what inspires you in putting together your fits. Who are your fashion icons? And what is your relationship to fashion and gender? Oops, that was a slip. In general.
Okay, great question. I actually like the fashion and gender part. I'll just say this. I love men's fashion. It is my bag. I appreciate and value women's fashion, but the sizing and the exactness is actually a science that eludes me. I love men's fashion, even though I am a little guy and not sample size. And so it involves a lot of piecemeal things. I don't know that I have any specific person, but I can think of two off the dome. Post Malone, I love his sense of style. I love A$AP Rocky. But I'll just say this. fashion is one thing. Like I love fashion, but style is everything. You can get all the clothes and do this and do that, but if you don't have a sense of style, oof. And why I got into fashion, why I love it, is because I found that the world had a really hard time understanding what to do with my body, but fashion didn't. And we can thank all the queers who didn't go into academia went into fashion. That's actually what happened. And so I guess I followed there, and I went into academia, and I was like, all right, this ain't for me. And I'm a big reader and a big proponent. But like I said, you have all the language in the world, but you need people to talk to. So, but it made it. I learned through fashion how to view my body as something beautiful, as something that I liked and I enjoyed, even though I was a little bit early for the rest of the world to catch up. But don't worry. Back in 2020, tiny, light-skinned, gender-ambiguous models, it's me, I'm talking about me, had their moment. And the world caught up. But I've moved on. I'm back out in these streets, out here trying to incite the next revolution with y'all. But anyway, what a dope question. Thank you for that. I could literally just talk about fashion forever. But if you are someone who's like, I want to combine my love of fashion and politics, check out Business of Fashion platform. It's great. They do great breakdowns and really just tell you how to kind of dress, but also how your clothes are made and where they're made and what the ethics are. They're just great. So anyway, that's a dope question. With that, let's wrap. I want to say thank you so much for listening to JFK Today. You know it means the world to me. The show really is a labor of love. You know that episodes are dropping 4 times a week. We're available everywhere pods are streaming. Please drop us your voice note questions at jfktodayShow@gmail.com. Shout out to KR and the JFK team, and shout out to you, the listeners, who make this all possible. I love y'all so much. Peace.